friends, welcome back. This one's going to be a long one, so you might want to get a drink and a snack. We're going to be playing with this beautiful new digital release from Sweet November Stamps. This is from the Haunted Manor Portraits. This is Madame Regina Ravenwood. It is a single digital image, and we'll be adding in some physical clear stamps and doing a lot of coloring. So if you want to see how I color, learn more about coloring, get some color combination ideas, this is the video for you. So for something like this, where I am sizing out my digital image to scale, and it's going to be the only thing on my card that's printed, I added those little lines when I went into my Word doc that I was pointing at in the very beginning. That's just that like straight up and down line on the keyboard that's over one of those like slash marks. It just helps me so that when I'm using my wire trimmer, I know where to trim so that my image is centered up. So I prep my digital images, I size them and get them ready and do whatever layering I'm going to do digitally in the Adobe Express or Adobe Cloud. And then from there, I will save it as a picture and upload it into a Word doc so that I can make sure when I print it, it is sized to the dimensions that I'm looking for. I do have a video more on that. I will leave it tagged down in the description below if you want to see that process more in depth. So I also took a solid, like real stamp from the one of the Halloween background sets, and I stamped this brick wall. I just stamped it really low. And this is going to become like our fire mantle place. And then with a pen and a Copic marker, I went in, with a ruler and a Copic pen, I went in and added just 2 lines across to create my mantelpiece. So I went in with some earth tones and reds to start building up this kind of brick color. I knew as soon as I saw this image that I wanted to use blues with her. It's probably the Harry Potter fan in me. I got like a first edition Harry Potter book in elementary school, like I think in 4th or 5th grade before like anybody was reading them. So I am like a diehard Harry Potter all the way. So it was giving Ravenclaw vibes. And so I knew I wanted blue. And I thought that adding in all of this red and orangey warmth would really help to pop against this blue later. So once I had that done, I decided I needed to figure out what the heck I was doing with this back wall. Do not ask me why my first thought was to add in that dark on the corners. I can't answer you. I don't know. But I did end up going back in with my W1 and mapping out my candlesticks. So I just literally kind of made rectangles and square shapes on the mantle. And then I added squiggly lines to the top and kind of started mapping out my wax drips. And this was just so that when I went in to do my like wallpaper or like B-board behind the picture, that I wouldn't accidentally draw a line through a space where I wanted there to be a candle. So I started out making these 1 inch apart, and I just decided that was not thin enough. So I went back in and added lines through the middle of each of those. And I'm starting out with a pretty light marker here, just kind of making sure that what I'm mapping out I actually like. And then I'm going to start just kind of blending those out so they're not just one harsh line. And that'll help kind of guide me through the rest of my coloring and shading for this back wall area. This definitely took a long time. This whole card took about an hour and 40 minutes. I was working slow. I was taking my time. I was watching YouTube videos in the background. So I just want to like level set with you that something like this can take as much or as little time as you want, depending on how much detail you want to put in, but also depending on how much, like how pressed you are, right? If I was really hustling, I could have gotten this done a little faster. But I enjoy the coloring process. this kind of Copic coloring and seam building is the therapy part of card making for me. It really helps me to turn off my anxious mind, and focus on the project in front of me instead of the 20,000 things on my to-do list. And it's one of the few things now that helps me to, that I can like zone out on without feeling guilty, right? Because I have my channel and because I'm working on design teams, my brain can still label this as work so that I don't feel like I'm not getting something done, right? Like if I sit on the couch and I have a list of to-dos and I am just like sitting there, eventually, most of the time, I start to feel guilty. Like I can't just sit and relax because I could be doing something productive. So this is like the perfect, for me, balance where I still am resting, right? I'm still sitting at my desk. I'm still comfortable. I'm still having some me time after the kids go to bed, and but it's still enough work in my mind that I feel like I'm being productive. So that I just want to level set with you that I hope that if coloring is not easy and relaxing for you, that eventually you get to a place where it is, because this is just so satisfying for me, to not only sit here and do this, but like to see the finished product when I was done. I'm so happy with this card. I wasn't planning on filming it, and I'm so glad that I filmed it because I just love these. And every October Eve series, I try to include at least one card that is like a true detailed coloring, very intense Copic scene card. And so this will be this year's card. And in the past, I've also left them just with music, but I feel like a lot of people don't love that and they end up with questions. So I figured I would talk through it. I did end up going back in with my ruler once my shading was done to re-emphasize the B-board lines. That was kind of my plan all along, instead of stressing about it in the beginning when I knew I was going to be coloring over them anyway, and kind of darkening up those upper edges, those upper corners, so you get kind of that vignette look. That is definitely what I was going for with those. So then I started to create the light around my candle flames, going in with some really light yellow markers and just kind of mapping out the glow around them, and then going back in with some yellow and oranges to build up the actual flame in the middle. So far, they're just kind of hovering over the candle. We'll go back in a little bit to add the wick. But yeah, just kind of playing back and forth. To help all of the waxy drips stand out, I decided to go back in with a little bit of a darker cool gray marker just to change up the tones. I wanted these to stand out from the wall, and I still really wanted them to read as white pillar candles. So I went in with my neutral grays and just started shading in and adding shading to one side of each of those drips. I also shaded in the mantelpiece just with some really loose kind of wood grain-ish lines. And then I grabbed this really teeny tiny little point. It's like a 0.3 marker. It's one of my absolute favorites. I think it's Tombow. I'll put it down in the description. I might not have a link, but I'll definitely put the full name in there for you. And I just started kind of creating lines from the corner to my portrait, and then creating those kind of arched spiderweb lines across. And I really love when they aren't even. I think it looks much more organic and realistic when they are not evenly spaced, when some of them like kind of crisscross a little and they're a little more spaced out in some areas. And then to help kind of create that shadow feel, to help them pop up off of that like wallpaper, that back wall, I went in with some warm gray markers and added in my shadows, just kind of offset from where they are. And then to help those to kind of feel more natural and organic in the space, I also went in with a 5, like a 0.5 or number 5 Jelly Roll white pen, which is the thinnest that I have. And I very lightly, kind of skipping places here and there, traced over the black lines just to help kind of not smooth it in, but take away some of the harshness from that black pen. For my portrait itself, sorry. For my portrait, I decided to go with a dark wood frame. So I went in, and you can see I'm not even really doing wood grain. I'm kind of just making like squiggles and then filling that in with a dark to like medium brown. I think I used E49, E59 for my two darkest, and then that E57, I'm just filling everything in. And because the mantle has that wood grain, it's kind of like a nod to that, and it'll be close enough. Your eye will be able to tell what it is without having to worry about doing an actual wood grain in that smaller space. So now I'm going in with a dark blue and starting to shade out and build up that sky. I again wanted to create more of a vignette feel where the edges of the sky were much darker, and it got lighter as it got more towards her face, like her actual form. And so I went in with my B90, started with my 99, now I'm at a 97, just kind of blending that and pulling that color towards the center. And then for the highlight areas, I will be going in with a 95, just kind of really filling in that area. I'm not doing anything crazy. You could make the sky as intense or not as you want. I just didn't want it to be the focus. I wanted all of the focus to be on the room and on her. So kind of wherever you put the most detail is where the eye is really going to be drawn. So just keep that in mind when you're laying out your scene. I also, at first I thought I was going to give her a blue dress, and then I was like, well, what am I going to do for the sky? So I thought I could still get the blue that I wanted if I put the blue in the sky and then kind of gave her some blue accents and then made her dress black. So that's what we're going to do. Before we moved to that, though, apparently I felt that this was the right time to start adding more spider webs. So I added 2 additional little spider web clumps coming from those candles at the bottom up towards the portrait, and then we'll go over those to add the shading and the white gel pen once the rest of the portrait is done. We'll add that in at the end. So now I'm going in with that 100 black very lightly just to start adding in some really deep shadows kind of under her ravens or crows and around the very edges of her dress. I didn't go too crazy just because that marker is so dark. And then I started going in with my cool grays again just to help this kind of stand out from that warm gray wall that we made, and my neutral candles. So C either 8 or 9 and then C7. I'm going to warn you now, I probably won't have every marker listed in the description this time just because there are so many of them. But my caps are on the screen for any time that I'm using my markers, and I hope that helps. I'll try. I'll see what I can do. So she has this really fun, very like a British hat. And so I wanted that to be black as well. So I am going in with those same exact colors, just kind of building up that texture. And I love the swoop and how sophisticated that feels. And then I also wanted to shade in those birds as well. Amy Young is the illustrator and owner for Sweet November Stamps along with her sister. But Amy colored this as well, and her crows are so beautifully colored. I need to go back and see how she colored hers because I love them. She added in either extra blue or purple or something, I think, to them, and they just really pop. So I kept mine black. Again, I wanted her face to be more of a focus than the birds, but now that I've seen Amy's, I also kind of want to play around with coloring these up in a different way. The grass I just kept, green. Again, this wasn't like the focus of the portrait, so I just did some really simple shading around those gravestones and then went in with my lighter shade green just to fill everything in. I think it would also be really fun to make this kind of like dead grass and like keep it more brown. But because of the frame and the mantle all being kind of in that same area, I didn't really want another brown. So I greened it up. I added some neutral grays to the tombstones. Now I'm going back in. I can't exactly tell you why I went in this order, but I'm going in now with that thin white gel pen again just to knock those spider webs back a little. And then again, to bring in that more orangey warm tone to counteract that blue, so they would like kind of play off of each other. Blue and orange are opposites on the color wheel, so they really help to pop, make each other stand out. So I grabbed some darker orangey markers for her hair, and I love how kind of vibrant and punchy that feels, especially once her face is colored in. It also ties in really well with the mantle and then the crow's beaks. It's kind of like we have our orange in three places, which I generally like to do. I did go in and add some of those same blue markers to her eyes and as well as the stone on her neck piece, and as well as the feather in her hat. I did end up bringing in one brighter blue into this, a little bit of a brighter blue tone into this feather with this one right here, that B16, just to help it to pop from the sky and again kind of balance out the vibrancy of her hair. So I really wanted her to be pretty fair skinned. So I went in with my EO4 pretty sparingly, just kind of adding some shadows under her hat, on her neck, around her eyes, and then blending that out a little bit with my E11. Normally I would go with a 13, but again, I knew that I wanted her to be pretty fair. So we went E11, E00, and then an E000. Yep. For my lightest shade. We of course are going to go back in and start adding some blush and some color. So we went in with a R20 and then blended that out. I made her eyebrows match with the medium and the darker shades of her hair. And then I gave her a white glove instead of going with a skin tone. I thought that would kind of help with this, how fancy she is. And I went for a little bit of a deeper red on her lips, which I really like. Added eye highlights to the birds and to her eyes, those catch lights. And then I'm using one of my favorite things, stitched rectangle dies to trim this out. And we're going to be heat embossing with white, a sentiment from another one of the Sweet November Stamps clear stamp sets. This one has these really cute little like jars and bottles, and at first I thought I might add some of those to the mantle, but they're just too big. So it says, let's hang for a spell. I used my white detail embossing powder for that, but I still had some places where it wasn't super clean. So I went in with my Sharpie paint pen and filled that out. And a lot of people will tell you that not to use Copic markers on top of embossing because it can ruin them. But every once in a while, I will take a pen like I did and just a teeny tiny bit and add it here and there to help the letters be more clear, and I haven't had any issues. So I'm guessing if you use it a lot and you're really running your nib over the embossing, I could see how that could be an issue. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm just telling you that when I've done it like that to clean up my letters, I've never had a problem. So you do with that, you do with that what you want. Yeah. So I added a little bit more shading around my candlesticks at the bottom and then as well as the top of the frame, just to emphasize that light from the bottom would be casting a shadow above it. And I added this panel to a piece of pattern paper from Honeybee Stamps that I love. It has this like diagonal stripe in it, and I think it ties everything together so well. So that is my scene card complete. I hope that this inspires you to make your own single layer scene card. Break out your markers, put on a YouTube video, have some fun. I will be back with you guys next week. I hope that you have an amazing week. And as always, happy crafting. I love you guys so much.